Lions offseason, starting off, Lions have made a few moves. First, I'd say major move was the Cade Mays signing, center out of Carolina. They bring him in on, I believe, a 3-year deal. Then they bring in Larry Borum, who's a former Miami Dolphin and a former Chicago Bear. Another kind of depth offensive line player. And as far as Cade Mays goes, if PFF is any indicator, kind of a middle of the road. Not, certainly not Tyler Linderbaum, as many people would have wanted, but also probably not, Graham Glasgow, one would hope. The other move they made was they bring in Isaiah Pacheco and Teddy Bridgewater. So Teddy Bridgewater is back in Detroit as your backup quarterback, which I think is probably a decent move. I didn't even see this. Malcolm Rodriguez and Rock Yassin both re-signed. I think those are both pretty solid moves as far as guys that were productive last year. You bring them back. That makes perfect sense to me. Now, the bigger move, obviously I'm late to the party, but the Taylor Decker release to me, it sent a little bit of a message, I think, which is that they are not going to get sentimental about their own guys. And we saw it also with guys like Amik Robertson and Alex Anzalone, who both walked in free agency, which I think it's a good thing to not get too sentimental with your own guys that you signed at the beginning of your tenure, or guys that you have, kind of remade in a way, like say a David Montgomery. So they let him walk, and they saved themselves a decent amount of money. Now, as far as bad stuff, I will just say this. I am concerned with the fact that there hasn't been any announcements of any restructurings. Not that they can't happen. There's no deadline for when they have to happen. They can happen whenever you need them to happen. You can technically get an official deal done, but then just, you need to sign the paperwork for the restructuring to make it work. But I would like to see if you could restructure an Aleem McNeil deal or a Jared Goff deal or an Amon-Ra St. Brown or Penei Sewell. It's not a matter of saying, hey, we're going to pay you less money. It's just restructuring the money. So I think it's really just a matter of getting it down. And I would be completely shocked and appalled if there's no plan to do that whatsoever, because there's no benefit to not doing it. Like, you need to free up some cap space, unless you don't think that there are any free agents currently out there that are worth your while. Then you don't do it. But even if you do feel that way, it's probably still better anyway, because it makes paying your rookies easier. It makes re-signing your own guys maybe a little bit easier, and it makes a potential trade a little bit easier. So it seems like the old Michael Scott win-win-win. So I don't get it, I guess. Now, the other major concern so far, and obviously, like I said at the opening, if you have any long-term judgment calls as this offseason's a failure, like there's no way to know that. We're 2 days in. We still have this thing called the draft. We still have this thing called, training camp. We still have all of the rest of the offseason. Like, there is still yet to have a bunch of guys that are free agents get signed. But with that said, the concern is we have not signed anybody on the defense. And I've said this season, I need offensive line and I need defensive line. I need these trenches completely rebuilt, retooled, whatever word you want to use. And so far, at the very least, I like that they have gotten pieces in the offensive line. They traded for a Juice Scruggs with the Dave Montgomery trade. They signed Cade Mays. They signed Larry Borum. They've gotten 3 new offensive linemen into their room, which I'm not saying that these guys are all Penei Sewells or that they're all, the future Hall of Fame gold jacket, but you needed some new bodies. That much was clear. And I think especially Cade Mays, I think he, from what I've heard, he grades out pretty well in pass protection. He's not as good in run protection, but it might be a matter of, look, he was on a Carolina team. They're not a very good team. You bring him in, change his scenery. Maybe Hank Fraley can develop him. And a lot of these guys are also pretty young. We're not talking about guys that are like 30 plus years old that are coming off of injuries. We're talking about guys in their late 20s that you might be able to still get some good football out of. I will just say that on the defensive side, I need a move. And I'm not saying you need to go out and sign Trey Hendrickson. I've already made my points about, sometimes guys at that age, at that position, they deteriorate pretty quickly. That's not necessarily a reason not to sign him, because he could help you right now, even at a half a strength size. But that's a real consideration. There is a player, though, that I would actually, and I know it would go against some of what I've been saying about Trey Hendrickson, and I'm not sure if people really have talked about it. And again, don't laugh me out of the room. But I wouldn't be mad about Cam Jordan. And here's why. Cam Jordan, he's going to be 37 years old, so he's no spring chicken. But Cam Jordan, his entire career, has played every single game of the season. His entire career, basically. I mean, like 16 games. I don't remember exactly when they added the 17, but he's played 16 games in at least every single season he's played. And the one thing that this team needs is somebody that can stay healthy, especially on the defensive line, and especially in the defense as a whole that has struggled to stay healthy. And I'm not saying that he's going to come in and be Lawrence Taylor, but last year he had 10.5 sacks. And now, granted, the year before he had 4 sacks. So maybe that was his last hurrah. But you put him up with Aiden Hutchinson on the opposite side. You got Lee McNeil up the middle. Tyleik Williams developing as well, could get better. I'm not saying he would be like, again, I'm not saying he'd be Lawrence Taylor. I'm not saying he'd be prime Nick Bosa. I'm not saying that. But he would be a pretty cheap option. And the Lions have had success, I think, bringing in guys from the Saints, i.e. Alex Anzalone. He's a former teammate. Obviously, Alex Anzalone's not on the team anymore, but Campbell, I think, would probably be familiar with a Cam Jordan because he would have worked with him when he was with the Saints. And he's a free agent. He's probably not going to cost you a whole lot because he's that old. He's probably not going to ask for a whole lot of term. He's probably going to be a guy that says, look, I got maybe 1 or 2 years left in this league. I think if they sign Cam Jordan, I would be quite happy. Now, I'd be even happier if they sign Trey Hendrickson because I think, if he stays healthy, he's probably going to give you more years potentially of good edge play than Cam Jordan. But those are the 2 guys on the defense that I would like to see. Now, obviously, secondary is its own thing. I do think DJ Reed is probably better than most people have in their mind. I understand last year was not great. He was good until he got hurt, and then he kind of fell off from there, and the rest of the secondary was also falling off. All of it is to say, I'm not unhappy with the way the offseason is going. I think so far they've acknowledged, okay, you needed a new running back, obviously. Got it. Isaiah Pacheco, I think, is a fine pickup. You needed some new offensive line. Got it. You got yourself a new center. You got a couple other younger and controllable and developable. Is that a word? Yeah. Develop-able players in, what's his name? Larry Borum and Juice Scruggs. But if this is your whole offseason, if you end the offseason with your signing of Teddy Bridgewater as your backup quarterback, that is a major concern. So we'll see. There hasn't been any moves so far on the defensive side. I don't know how you can go about this offseason and not bring in anybody on the defensive side. And honestly, any position. Like if you bring in a linebacker, if you bring in a guy, I would prefer the defensive line. You bring in someone on the defensive line. You bring in somebody in the secondary. You need a little bit there. I mean, especially when you lose Robertson and Anzalone, you're going to need some backups there. You're going to need something to insulate. And obviously, again, the draft exists. Trades exist. It's not as though you're limited to going out and signing somebody. So, go out and make the moves. Like I said, My general feelings right now, I'm okay. I'm not ecstatic. I'm not, screaming. I'm not throwing my computer out of the room. I'm okay. I think it's fine, but it's not enough. They need to do more, especially on the defense. Hey, YouTube, if you like clips like that, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. We've got live shows every Tuesday night. Hope to see you there.